Hello and happy World Oceans Day. My name is Natalie Kelly. I'm an actress and activist of Indigenous Peruvian Quechua descent, and it's an honor to be your moderator today for the segment Oceanic Discoveries, which will highlight the awe and beauty of the ocean and the incredible biodiversity of marine life. We'll hear about deep sea exploration, unexpected scientific discoveries, magnificent creatures and cultures, ecosystem restoration, and more. In particular, this segment will highlight the life aspect of this year's theme, life and livelihoods, and give us all a reason to fall in love with the wonder of the ocean. Our first presenter in this segment is wildlife photojournalist and film producer Brian Scarry, who will be sharing some of his new work on the secrets of whales. He will take us into their mysterious and beautiful world, highlighting the distinct culture, identities, traditions, and relationships of whales.
Hi, my name is Brian Scarry, and I'm a wildlife photographer and film producer. And happy World Oceans Day. What I'd like to share with you today is a brief look at my latest project about the culture of whales. This was recently released as a National Geographic cover story, a 4-part Disney series, a documentary series on Disney+, and a book that I wrote all about the fact that whales have culture. I created this project after nearly a decade of reading scientific papers and talking to researchers about their work that was revealing that whales have unique cultures that are in many ways not so different than human cultures. The fact that within genetically identical species, whales are doing things differently. And these are the things that they celebrate, these ancestral traditions that they pass on to their young. This is indeed their culture. My friend Shane Garrow, who's a whale biologist, describes it like this, that behavior is what we do, culture is how we do it. So for example, most humans eat food with utensils. That is our behavior. But whether we use chopsticks or knives and forks is our culture. Turns out whales are doing the same thing. They're not using utensils, but they do things very differently within a given species, depending where in the world they live and how they were taught. So as I looked into this further, I realized and found that whales are doing many things quite like humans. They segregate by language or dialect. They have cuisine preferences. They have singing competitions, and they even take summer holidays at their favorite beach. As I looked at this even deeper, I realized that this could be a bit of a game changer, that if we could see our planet through the lens of culture of another species, that it could change our view not only of the ocean, but to our relationship with nature. To see it as a place where families live, families that are not so different than our own, that celebrate identity, relationships, and their traditions, things that are important to them. Relationships like the one between a mother humpback whale and her calf, as we see here. A mom humpback invests a great deal of energy and time into her offspring. It's a year-long gestation. And then after that little calf is born, the mother spends another year teaching it not only the skills that it will need to learn to survive on its own, but the things that are important to these whales and their cultures. New research even shows that humpback whale moms will whisper to their calves when they're swimming through places where predators might be and they don't want to give away their position. So I think at the end of the day, there's just so much we still don't know about these animals, but what has been revealed is quite amazing. Another species that I worked with on this project is the sperm whale, an animal that throughout the centuries has been portrayed as a monster, a leviathan, smashing ships and killing sailors. But what we know today that science has revealed is that these animals are shy and gentle and highly social. They have the biggest brain of any animal on Earth and are highly cognitive. They are matrilineal societies. They live in families that are led by the older, wiser females. They spend most of their life in the deep ocean foraging for squid, but every day or so they come together as families. One of the most fascinating aspects, I think, of sperm whale science these days is revealing that they have unique languages, or actually dialects, that they speak in this almost Morse code type of language that is unique to groups of families that belong to what are known as clans, and that they don't intermingle with other sperm whales that have a different language. When I first heard this from scientists, I thought of the cultures in the neighborhoods of New York at the turn of the last century. You had all these little enclaves of language, and it seems like sperm whales are doing things much the same way. I have a little audio clip that we can listen to that allows us to hear what these sperm whales sound like when they're talking to each other. My guess is they're probably saying, there's that photographer again trying to take our picture. I wish he would go away. Well, even at the family level, so, looking at language or dialects is, broader. It's multiple families that all speak that same dialect. But even within a family that might be comprised of 10 or 12 animals, they are having their own sort of cultural or family traditions. At first glance, this might be a picture that would look like a mother and calf, her new baby. But what we're actually seeing here is babysitting. This little calf's mother is actually about 600 meters deep, foraging for squid, eating squid. And while she's away, she assigns a babysitter. Now, in some families, it's a dedicated female in the family that does all the babysitting. And in other families, the adult females take turns. But again, not so different than our own families. When the little calf is with its mom, they can usually be seen swimming very close below under the tail, which is where they could nurse from their mom, where they get the milk that they need for the first few years of their lives. But my friends who are whale biologists told me that there's an old saying in the whale biology world that says, someday we will know everything there is to know about whales, except how a sperm whale calf nurses, because they just couldn't figure it out with that big lower jaw. They couldn't imagine how it could suckle from its mom. But while working on this project, I was able to make these first images of a little sperm whale calf, maybe 6 months old, actually nursing from its mother. A very tolerant and relaxed mom that allowed me into their world to be able to see this unique behavior. I also worked on this project with Orca, sometimes called killer whales, which in my estimation are arguably the most intelligent animal in the ocean. And with Orca, one of the things I focused on from a cultural perspective is the fact that they create unique feeding strategies depending where in the world they live, that, they are identical all over the world genetically, but they do things differently in terms of their food preference. So here we see a photo of an orca about to attack a little sea lion pup. And this is in Patagonia, Argentina, where just a couple of families have figured out this strategy to get the food that they like to eat. And they are the only orca in the world that do this way of feeding. On the other side of the planet, in New Zealand, orca have a taste for stingrays, and those families have mastered the technique of swimming into shallow water, mangroves, and harbors, picking up stingrays and sharing their food. And again, this is their culture. It is what they teach their children. Orca families that have grandmothers present, actually, science has shown that the young will live 5 times longer than those families that don't have a grandmother. So these cultural and ancestral traditions and generational learning is very important to these animals. I also wanted to share this photo that I made in the Norwegian Arctic on a very dark day, just a few days away from the polar night when it will be dark 24 hours a day. And what we see here is a mother orca carrying her dead calf. Very sad situation. The family was sort of closing ranks as they were swimming very purposely through this fjord on a very dark day, as I mentioned, and I was able to get close enough to make this image. But, there's no other way, for me anyway, to describe what we're seeing here other than grief. It was like a mourning ceremony, a funeral procession, if you will, where this family was not able to let go of this little calf, their calf that had died. Well, the last species that I wanted to share in this presentation is the beluga whale, an animal that lives in the high Arctic. And the animals that I worked with live in the wintertime in the waters near Greenland, where it's dark 24 hours a day in the wintertime. And then as the sun emerges in summer, they migrate hundreds of kilometers through the Northwest Passage to arrive at a place called Cunningham Inlet in an island known as Somerset Island, an uninhabited island in the high Arctic of Canada. And here is a place that they come to. It's an estuary ecosystem where the river flows into the sea. It's a few degrees warmer, the fresh water is, than the ocean water. And it's a perfect place where they can gather by the dozens, hundreds and even thousands. It's also unique in the animal kingdom because it is a group maternity ward. It seems that the moms often come here to have their babies, to give birth to their calves. And this is an aerial photo I made of a number of beluga whale moms with their calves, which are darker in color. We even see one riding on the back here, but a very unique behavior, places that they've been coming to for eons to do this very thing. To get underwater photos, however, I had to design and build unique cameras that didn't exist because we're not allowed to go in the water here. And even if I was allowed, if I put as much as a toe in the water, I would get a stampede of, maybe 1,000 whales. They are very vulnerable here and they would be threatened if I tried to go in the water. But with these passive cameras that I could place underwater before the belugas arrived, I was able to create a window into their social behaviors here. And we see these socializations where they're frolicking and playing. They actually rub on the gravel bottom like a natural loofah to exfoliate their skin. And we made the very first pictures of a baby beluga here. This little guy was maybe only a few hours or at most a day old, still had the fetal folds on its body while it was posing for the camera here while mom was swimming behind. Just extraordinary window into their cultural lives. New research shows that beluga babies are given the same name by the family as the mother until it begins to speak proper beluga language, and then it gets its own name. I mean, how amazing is that? And one of the real surprises was that I was able to capture gameplay, something that I didn't know anything about with belugas, and the fact that they pick up these little rocks or little stones and swim around with them. It's a bit of a game of catch or a game of stone where they'll carry it for a game of stones where they carry it for a while and then drop it, and inevitably another beluga will pick it up and then carry it around as well. So, again, we think about these animals' lives. They live in families, in clans. They have to catch food, they have to contend with climate change, all their world is changing, increased noise, ship traffic, and still they make time to play these games because it brings them joy with each other. They socialize, they need community. And how wonderful is that? So in closing, I just wanted to offer a few thoughts. My hope is that with these new insights and understandings about whales, it might help all of us to better understand that we're not alone on this planet and that we share it with other sentient beings and rich cultures and families. And maybe through this understanding, we can become better stewards of our water planet. So thank you very much.
We will now travel to the deepest part of the ocean with native Pacific Islander and marine botanist Nicole Yamase. She will share insights from her recent experience, learning more about the ocean she calls home, the resilient life in her backyard, and some unexpected discoveries she made at the bottom of the sea.
Kasalelie, ito'y Nicole Yamase, ngayon Pohnpei Rook, sang Faroe States of Micronesia. Hello, my name is Nicole Yamase, and I am from the islands of Pohnpei and Chuuk in the Faroe States of Micronesia. And today, I will be sharing my story as the first Pacific Islander from Micronesia and first marine botanist to reach the deepest part of the ocean, the Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench. The Challenger Deep is located at the southern end of the Mariana Trench, which is part of the Faroe States of Micronesia's exclusive economic zone. The Challenger Deep has a depth of 10,925 meters, or 6.8 miles, and only less than 24 people have made this descent. Now, with that being said, more people have been to the moon than to the bottom of the ocean. I traveled to the Mariana Trench with Victor Vescovo, a deep-water sea explorer, and the crew of the DSSV Pressure Drop, and they have contributed significantly to our understanding of our ocean's depths. One of the goals for the pressure drop is to continue to map the ocean floor. Currently, only 20% of the seafloor is mapped. So the pressure drop is equipped with a multi-beam sonar that allows the ship to produce high-definition maps. These maps allow us to visualize what the seafloor looks like. On March 11th, Victor Vescovo and I descended to the bottom of the Challenger Deep in the DSV limiting factor submersible, making me the first Pacific Islander to reach the bottom of the ocean. The trip took a total of 10 hours. That's 4 hours going down, 2 hours on the seafloor, and 4 hours back up. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me to not only be a part of a team that continues to do groundbreaking scientific work, but it was also an opportunity for me to show how we Pacific Islanders are intimately connected to our oceans through our ancestors who are the world's best navigators. Our ocean is a part of who we are. These are the very oceans that our ancestors crossed in their canoe to make a whole new life for us. These are also the very waters that have nourished and sustained generations and generations of life, both on land and in the water. As a Pacific Islander marine biologist, it is my responsibility to protect our oceans. This can be done by finding strategies that have a balance between traditional knowledge and scientific work, educating our youth and bring awareness on a local, national, and global scale, because our livelihoods depend on it. My research focuses on the ecophysiology of native marine plants in our shallow waters. I have measured the growth and photosynthesis of the native green alga Microdictyon cetylenum, which is one of the top 10 most abundant algae here in the Hawaiian Islands, and my work is one of the first to record such data. I am one of the very few that can say I have seen the top of the sandy shores all the way down to the bottom of the Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench. And this experience really strengthened my perspective on conserving these highly productive shallow reef ecosystems, which are homes to our native species. These shallow reefs may sustain life all the way at the bottom of the Challenger Deep through organic material that floats all the way from the top all the way down to the bottom of these depths through organic material called marine snow. Now, a large number of species that are native to the tropical Pacific remain unstudied, so this leaves many doors of opportunities for young Pacific Islanders to study and to get involved in answering really important STEM questions. And I always say you cannot manage what you don't understand. While I was in the submersible on the way down, I watched the light blue ocean color of the sea surface turn into darker shades as we slowly lost light. And I thought about all the species that were found in each of these zones. And I was so happy and honored to say that all of these are found here in my backyard, here in our waters. Unfortunately, when I went down to the bottom of the deepest part of the ocean, guess what I saw? I saw trash, plastic line, plastic rope, laying there on the bottom of the seafloor, a place where less than 2 dozen people have been to before, yet there was trash. And the fact that there's trash at the bottom of the seafloor means that there's trash everywhere in between. If we're putting trash in the ocean, this is going to eventually make its way back to us through the fish that we eat. Plastic trash is a huge problem because it takes a very long time to degrade. Marine organisms also mistaken them for food, and so they ingest it. And this leads them to get entangled, to choke, or it also impairs their breathing, and all of these eventually lead to their death. This is something that we don't want for our marine life, and this is something that we don't want for us. And so this is why we need to keep our oceans healthy, because if our oceans are healthy, then we are healthy. And in other words, if the health of our oceans, in other words, the health of our oceans will reflect the health of our communities. And so overall, we really need to work collectively with government leaders, with our traditional leaders, with community members and environmental organizations to help protect our beautiful and vast oceans, which is home to a diverse which is home to diverse marine organisms and ecosystems, but also home to us Pacific Islanders. Kalangan and happy World Oceans Day.
Our next speaker is Dr. Jonathan Whitney, a NOAA marine biologist who will be introducing us to the mysteries of how life begins in the ocean. He will explain what surface slicks are and how the journey of life starts in the ocean for most fish.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Whitney. I'm a marine biologist at the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration here in Honolulu, Hawaii. And today, I'm excited to tell you about a very special place off the coast of the largest volcano in the world, where larval stages, babies of more than 100 species of fishes from coral reefs to the bottom of the deep sea, all come together in the same nursery habitat just below the surface. This is a story about a world rich with baby animals from across the ocean. And many of the characters you may know as adults, fishes like billfish and jacks, fishes we rely on for food and maintaining healthy coral reefs. But have you ever thought about the lives of baby fish, where they are born and how they grow up, their origin stories? What if I told you that for most ocean species, we know very little about what happens during the first few weeks of their lives, where they go, what they do, and why? Now, to explore these stories, let's shrink ourselves down and try to see from the perspective of an egg. Now, life for most ocean fishes begins with the hatching of an egg. And to survive the open ocean, freshly hatched tiny fish larvae must find food, avoid predators, navigate ocean currents, all on their own. And their experiences during these great ocean odysseys have long been a mystery, until now. Our recent study found that ocean features called surfaces are biodiversity hotspots that provide rich oases for baby fishes, more than 100 species from different ocean ecosystems. We found an astounding mix of larvae from pelagic predators like mahi-mahi, spearfish, coral reef fish like jacks and puffers, even deep water species like tripod fish and anglers, all mixing with larval crabs, squid, and shrimp, all at the surface. And these diverse animals are all connected, brought together and coexisting for just a short period of time in their early days. So what are surface slicks? Slicks are these narrow, meandering lines of smooth water on the ocean surface that are common in coastal areas around the world, including Hawaii. And they're formed when ocean currents and tides interact with variations in the seafloor. And these forces together create surface flow that gathers plankton, fish, eggs, and floating debris into these compressed areas. And on Hawaii Island, slicks are a dominant feature across the coastline. And the people of Hawaii have long recognized slicks as an important part of the seascape, where they're even referenced in traditional Hawaiian melees. But despite this historical knowledge, scientists have only recently begun to explore their ecological significance. So to unravel the slick secrets, our research team combined extensive in-water surveys with satellite images of slick footprints using a new technique that identifies them from space. And we found that ocean slicks only cover around 8% of the surface, but they contain nearly half of all larval fish in our study area. And we were shocked to find larvae of so many species that were only found in these places. And so in these special habitats, you get larval and juvenile phases of fishes and invertebrates that all come together to feed on this rich concentration of prey. You get phytoplankton, zooplankton, eggs, other fishes, even insects floating at the surface. And this enrichment propagates up the food web, enhancing energy available to bigger fish, seabirds, marine mammals, and even humans. And the fish that grow up in these hotspots can become bigger, faster, and better swimmers. And the greater survival will lead to more replenishment of adults from coral reefs to the open ocean to the bottom of the deep sea. And these places may seem like distant ocean worlds, but they are all intimately connected by the tiniest travelers on the great ocean odysseys. They are connected by a shared nursery and a shared early life history. It's these fishes that replenish our fisheries and our coral reefs. Their successes are critical. Their futures and ours are intimately linked, and their stories are incredible. So the next time you gaze out on the open ocean, you might not be able to see much, but just think about this hidden world, about these countless and marvelous baby animals that might be living there, just below the surface. Thank you, and happy World Oceans Day.
Our next speaker, Oceanic Science Program Lead, Maddie Rodrigue, will take us back into the depths on a deep sea exploration of the Red Sea. She will be unveiling some discoveries for the first time ever on behalf of Oceanic in this session with us in honor of World Ocean Day.
Hi everyone, happy World Oceans Day. I'm Maddie Rodrigue, the Science Program Lead at Oceanic, and I am so excited to share with you a deep sea discovery that we made last year. Oceanic visited the Neom region of the Northern Red Sea in the fall of 2020 with a plan to conduct one of the largest, most ambitious scientific expeditions in the region. Our goal was to study and understand this unique underwater world as a conservation and protection measure, and we were lucky enough to be working with scientists from all over the world to do just that. One of those scientists that we hosted aboard the Ocean Explorer was Dr. Sam Purkis, a marine geologist from the University of Miami. And Sam was responsible for leading the deep sea geology portion of our multidisciplinary expedition. So this is a pretty unique and relatively unexplored portion of the world. The Northern Red Sea has several unique characteristics, and we at Oceanic were really interested in unlocking some of those really unique features. We had been on a 42-day expedition conducting multidisciplinary surveys of the entire ecosystem, so seafloor all the way up to the surface. We were doing mapping, we were doing sampling, we were doing a lot of different types of work. And one of the big things that we were trying to understand is the geology of the Northern Red Sea. So what does the seafloor look like? What's unique about it? Why is it important? What can it tell us about the formation of the Red Sea? A lot of this geological work looked very similar and very mundane, very day-to-day, kind of boring. We were doing a lot of deep sea work with our remotely operated vehicle, our ROV, which is capable of going down to 6,000 meters. So typically on an average day, we would be conducting a pretty basic transect where the ROV would be flying a couple of meters above the seafloor, and we would just be looking at the different types of rocks and sand and sediment and different species that we may or may not encounter along the way. So we're about 6 hours in to basically staring at what looked like flat mud. And we were about ready to pull up the ROV and sort of chalk the day up to just another one of those. All of a sudden, two things happened where it felt like time stood still, but they simultaneously told us that we had stumbled upon something incredible. So the first thing is that our forward-facing sonar on the ROV completely went dark. So before, what we were getting was a bunch of acoustic feedback on what types of rocks and features we were seeing in front of the ROV that could look out to about 50 meters, which is super helpful when you're, 2 kilometers below the surface of the ocean. The other thing that happened was the layers of sediment started looking really different. So they started getting almost striped, and they changed colors to be really beautiful yellows and reds, and had very specific sort of layers to them stacked on top of each other, almost like a beach. And in that moment, instantaneously in mission control, we all realized that we had stumbled across what's known as an underwater lake or a brine pool. The craziest thing is that the brine pools, these underwater lakes, are sitting at the bottom of the seafloor. So where you think the seabed is, then take 3.5, 4, 5 meters of super dense, super corrosive, super hot, incredibly salty, totally oxygenless liquid, stick it on the bottom of the seafloor. So our forward-facing sonar essentially was pinging into the brine, but the brine itself is so incredibly dense that we were receiving just this empty nothingness back. The stripes that we saw on the beach of this underwater lake were essentially bacteria, different species, different types of bacteria that were all different colors that could exist at the most extreme environments on the planet, which are some of these deep sea brines. Brine pools, as I said, essentially being the underwater lakes that they are also kind of cryogenic chambers. So there are these chambers where things are frozen in time, and we are able to look at the brines and look at the things that get trapped in the brine, either falling from the surface down sediment slope, or animals that get trapped and are not able to make it out of the brine. We're able to look at all of these things and sort of unlock geological and biological time. We can say who's visited, we can say how the Red Sea has formed over time, we can look at major massive events in the climate record. We're able to take samples of the brine fluid itself, and we realized that while the temperature wasn't extremely hot, it was incredibly corrosive. So the oxygen levels were completely, they totally bottomed out. No oxygen. So normal things that exist by utilizing oxygen, so life as we know it, can't possibly exist there. But we did see life. So we were able to see mussels along the seafloor, similar to the type of species that are found in other brines, but completely different in that they were very small and they were nestled amongst all of these bacterial layers. We're able to take samples of the bacteria which are being analyzed so we can understand what type of what's called extremophiles, so these extreme animals, these extreme organisms that are living in these volatile conditions, how they're able to evolve, how they're able to survive, and how they're able to exist in these areas that nothing else can. We were able to also take sediment cores with some special tools that we sort of had to whip up on the spot because we didn't expect to make this discovery, where we're actually able to unlock the layers of geological history within the Red Sea. So we can see how the Red Sea formed, major geological events. Have there been seismic shifts? Was there a major polluting event? Are heavy metals somehow trapped in this time capsule that is a brine pool? The really interesting thing is that we weren't expecting to see much active life. So I mentioned that we did see life, mussels, bacteria, etc. We weren't really expecting to see things swimming in and out of the brine, utilizing the brine. But we did actually find, much to our surprise, that there were these little tiny shrimp that were transversing across the top of the brine, so what's called as the brine interface. So as you're right above the brine, you have sort of regular, somewhat volatile, kind of normal seawater conditions. Obviously at very high pressure, since again, we're 1,800 meters below the surface. These shrimp were sort of swimming along, and then they would grab fish that were around them, these little tiny fish, and they would grab them by the tail, and then they would dunk them into the brine, essentially stunning them in this incredibly volatile, toxic environment. The fish would be stunned, and the shrimp would swim off back to the safer shores of the brine beach, as it were, and consume the fish. So we weren't expecting to see that much life, that much active life in and around this incredibly volatile environment. We have been waiting months to share this discovery with the world, and we are so excited to share this with you all on World Oceans Day. OceanX has a mission to explore the world's oceans and share discovery with the public, and we hope that discoveries like this help to inspire the next generation of ocean explorers.
We will now learn about a discovery so incredible that it is actually visible from space. Our final speaker in this segment is Dr. Austin Gallagher, the Chief Executive and Lead Scientist of nonprofit Beneath the Waves. Austin's research to track and study tiger sharks led to an unbelievable and noteworthy discovery of critical habitat for both the sharks as well as all life on Earth.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Austin Gallagher. I'm the Chief Scientist of Beneath the Waves, a nonprofit research institute working to advance the conservation of oceans through cutting-edge science. And today I'm going to be speaking a little bit about blue carbon and some really exciting discoveries we made in our oceans. Blue carbon is a term that refers to all of the carbon dioxide that is stored in our oceans, and it's usually done through plants, which is pictured here. This is a seagrass meadow in the Bahamas. And seagrass meadows, mangroves, and salt marshes have an incredible capacity to sequester or store carbon. And these are ecosystems that are known as carbon sinks. And because they've become so important in the overall climate change discussion, this is something that we're hearing a lot more of today. And it really interfaces nicely with marine protected areas. We do live on a blue planet, and we're trying to figure out where these blue carbon hotspots might be. Seagrasses and mangroves are usually found in subtropical warm waters, places, the Caribbean, where our organization does a lot of work, but they're also found in temperate waters as well. And finding these seagrass meadows, which is something we've been focusing on a lot of our time on, there's a variety of methods to do that, and it can be a little tricky, and there's no one perfect tool for that job. You can use satellites, and these are some images at the top that kind of show human activity and also take images of what's happening on our planet. There are Earth orbiting satellites that are taking these photos, and they can reflect back down to us what they're seeing, and we know maybe it's a seagrass meadow, maybe it's mangrove, or maybe it's just sand. Now that's an autonomous way that does require a lot of technological expertise and processing of those images. The other way to do it is to just get underwater yourself. And some of these images on the bottom, you can use drones, but then you can also hop in the water and be towed. And we can take pictures of these waters and really see where those seagrass meadows might be. A little bit more time intensive, and not going to be able to cover all of the areas that you might need to go to. And we might be biased in our own logic as humans as to where those blue carbon resources might be. So what we've been doing is we've been partnering and collaborating with sharks and other large marine consumer and predatory species to help us find and discover these blue carbon hotspots. My team and I have been working in the Bahamas now for over 5 years, studying the movements and behavior of large sharks like this tiger shark. This is a 13-foot, about 4-meter tiger shark that I met in the Bahamas just about a month ago. And I took a photo of her here just up off the coral reef, and she looks like such an incredible top predator here. But right before this photo was taken, I was spending about an hour and a half with her on a very lush seagrass meadow in the northern Bahamas. So what we've been able to do is follow these animals' movements, because they will take you to some of the most important ecosystems. And the place where we've done a lot of this work is the Bahamas. And the Bahamas are unique because they have these shallow water banks that you can see kind of in the background of this image here. These are carbonate banks that are ideal for hosting seagrass meadows because they're shallow. They're about 20 feet, 8 meters in depth. They get a lot of sunlight. And all of our tiger sharks showed us through their movements, as you can see here, each color represents a different individual tiger shark that's been tagged. They do spend a lot of time in and around the banks. This is their home, and they're clearly using these waters for a reason. And we know that tiger sharks can be associated with seagrass meadows from other places in the world. So it really got us thinking, is there really seagrass on the Bahama banks? So in order to answer that question, we needed to use some more technology and again, ask for some help from our tiger sharks. And what we were able to do is attach these high-tech camera tags to the fins of these animals. And we release them safely, and the tiger sharks swim off. And what they will do is they will essentially serve as oceanographers, or they'll actually be surveying the seafloor for us. This camera will record what the shark sees for a period of about 2 days. And then the entire camera will come off, float to the surface, and nothing is left on the shark. And we have to go manually retrieve that package. So it's a bit daunting, but when we do retrieve it, it is like Christmas morning every time. And this is sometimes what you see. We have one of our tiger sharks here that is indeed swimming over a seagrass meadow. And we've done this now with about 10 different tiger sharks. And what we've been able to uncover is the fact that there are patches of extremely dense seagrass meadows, essentially forming a large prairie on the Bahama banks. So some of the predictions that we made from space, some of the anecdotal evidence that our partners and their local knowledge has bestowed upon us seem to be true. And we think that this could be the world's largest seagrass meadow. This is an image of myself swimming over one of these extremely productive, patches of seagrasses in the Bahama banks. And this is essentially what you would see if you went into a rainforest, but for the ocean. And these seagrass meadows are almost as productive, if not more productive, than most forests in terms of producing oxygen, but the real kicker is storing that carbon in the sediment. So we're now in the process of trying to confirm and validate our theory that this could be the world's largest seagrass meadow. And we're really moving to find where some of these other blue carbon hotspots might be. This is a new initiative for our team called Project Blueprint. And I love ending on this image because it shows the Bahama Banks, which is that shallow carbonate platform. And you can actually see those vegetation patches. Some of what we now know is actually seagrass there on the Bahama Banks. So through working with philanthropists, working with corporations, we're going to be able to go out and make these incredible discoveries and then hopefully stimulate sustainable development and job creation around the protection of these incredible ecosystems. So definitely stay tuned. I look forward to sharing more of our work and discoveries soon. And thanks for listening.
Thank you to all of our speakers for your stories and your contributions. It's so wonderful to be a part of this momentous event and to see how many people are joining from all around the world to celebrate our oceans. We've learned so much today, and yet we've only scratched the surface. There's still so much to be discovered when it comes to the ocean and her wonders. And that's why it's so important that we stay supportive of these endeavors and stay curious. Thank you for your time.